This video presents 10 English listening selections about chocolate that you can listen to passively. Now, let's get started. Space food chocolate. Enjoying chocolate in space presents unique challenges. In the zero-gravity environment of a spacecraft, crumbs and fragments can float away and damage sensitive equipment. Furthermore, temperatures inside a sunlit cabin can rise significantly, causing conventional chocolate to melt. To overcome these issues, special heat-resistant chocolate has been developed for astronauts. This type of chocolate is engineered to maintain its solid form and not crumble, ensuring it can be consumed safely without creating a mess. The production of this space-friendly chocolate involves several key steps. First, cocoa butter, which melts around human body temperature, is largely replaced with high melting point hardened vegetable oils. Second, the individual particles of cocoa and sugar are coated with a thin layer of edible protein, which helps the bar retain its shape even if the fats inside soften. After being mixed, the ingredients are solidified under high pressure to create a dense, sturdy block. Finally, the bar is often covered with a hard sugar shell, similar to M&Ms, which acts as a final barrier against heat and prevents pieces from breaking off.
Intentionally bad chocolate. During World War II, the U.S. Army commissioned the Hershey Chocolate Company to create a high-energy, heat-resistant chocolate bar for its soldiers' emergency supplies. This became known as the Ration D bar. The military specified 4 requirements. It had to weigh 4 ounces, be high in calories, withstand high temperatures, and, most unusually, its taste should be a little better than a boiled potato. This final requirement was crucial to the bar's intended purpose. The reason for the strange taste specification was to prevent soldiers from eating the bar as a casual snack. It was designed strictly as an emergency food source, to be consumed only in dire situations. To achieve this unappealing flavor, Hershey reduced the amount of sugar and added oat flour, which resulted in a dense, bitter, and difficult-to-eat bar. While many soldiers disliked the taste, calling it Hitler's secret weapon, the Ration D bar successfully fulfilled its mission, providing vital sustenance and saving countless lives on the battlefield when no other food was available.
Cacao Currency. In the Aztec Empire, cacao beans were much more than just the raw ingredient for a bitter drink. They were a cornerstone of the economy, functioning as a widespread form of currency. The value of these beans was rooted in their cultural significance. Cacao was considered a sacred gift from the gods, and its consumption was largely restricted to the elites of society, such as nobles, priests, and decorated warriors. This restricted access ensured that cacao beans remained a highly desirable and valuable commodity. The practical characteristics of cacao beans also made them an ideal form of money. They were durable when dried, lightweight, and easy to transport, simplifying trade across the vast empire. Furthermore, their small, uniform size made them divisible, allowing for transactions of varying values. For instance, a single tomato could be purchased for 1 bean, while a rabbit might cost 100. While this system was effective, it wasn't foolproof. Some clever individuals would create counterfeit beans by removing the valuable interior and refilling the husk with mud or clay, a testament to the bean's established role as currency. Chocolate in Edo. The first recorded encounter Japan had with chocolate dates back to the late 18th century, during the Edo period. At this time, Japan maintained a strict policy of national isolation. The only gateway for European trade was a small man-made island in Nagasaki called Dejima, which was exclusively operated by Dutch traders. Historical records from 1797 and subsequent years show that a product called shokurato, the Japanese phonetic spelling of the Dutch word for chocolate, was presented as a gift to the Tokugawa shogun. However, the shokurato of that era was vastly different from the sweet confection we know today. It was likely a solid, dark, and bitter block, valued not for its taste, but for its supposed medicinal properties. European merchants presented it as a form of rare and exotic medicine, or a health tonic. Unfortunately, no documents have been found that describe whether the shogun ever consumed this shokurato, or what he thought of it. Thus, the story of Japan's first chocolate remains a fascinating mystery. Gene-edited cacao. The global chocolate industry relies on the cacao bean, but its supply is under constant threat. Major diseases, such as black pod disease, can cause substantial losses, destroying up to 30 or 40% of the annual global crop. For decades, the primary method for creating more resilient cacao plants was conventional breeding, where plants with desirable traits are cross-pollinated. However, this process is incredibly slow, often taking more than 10 years to develop a new variety. This lengthy time frame makes it difficult to respond effectively to new diseases or changing climate conditions. To address this challenge, scientists are now using advanced genome editing technology like CRISPR-Cas9. This tool allows them to make precise changes to a cacao plant's DNA, enhancing its natural resistance to diseases. Unlike conventional breeding, this method significantly shortens the development process for new seedlings, reducing it from decades to just a few years. Widespread adoption of these disease-resistant seedlings could lead to a large reduction in pesticide use by farmers and more stable harvests, contributing to a more sustainable cacao supply for the future. Modern and outdated chocolate. Most modern, mass-produced chocolate is defined by its incredibly smooth and uniform consistency. This is achieved through industrial processes that use high-speed machinery to grind cacao particles down to a microscopic size. The primary goals of this method are efficiency and creating a familiar, melt-in-your-mouth texture that can be produced on a massive scale. For a long time, this industrial approach has been seen as the standard for high-quality chocolate, with smoothness being a key indicator of good craftsmanship. However, a growing number of artisan chocolate makers are challenging this idea by reviving an ancient technique, stone grinding. They use a machine called a melanger, which has granite wheels that slowly grind the cacao nibs over 24 to 72 hours. This gentle, low-heat process preserves the delicate and complex flavor notes of the cacao bean, which are often lost in high-speed, high-heat industrial methods. This trend suggests a shift in perspective. Instead of prioritizing a perfectly smooth texture, there is a growing appreciation for preserving the cacao's inherent character and aroma, even if it means sacrificing some efficiency.
Is chocolate food? When chocolate was introduced to Europe in the 16th century, it sparked a major theological debate within the Catholic Church. The core of the argument was whether drinking chocolate was permissible during periods of religious fasting. The rules of fasting prohibited solid foods, but generally allowed for liquids. Therefore, the discussion centered on whether the highly nutritious chocolate beverage should be classified as a food or a drink. The issue was taken very seriously, as it concerned the proper observance of religious duties. The debate was mainly between two opposing groups. The Jesuits, many of whom had worked in the New World and knew of cacao's properties, argued that as a liquid, it did not break the fast. On the other hand, the more rigid Dominicans contended that its nutritional value and the pleasure it provided went against the spirit of fasting. This disagreement continued for over a century, until 1662, when Pope Alexander VII finally issued a ruling. He declared, liquidum non frangit jejunium, meaning liquid does not break the fast, which effectively ended the long-standing controversy.
Man Who Sweetened Japan. Taichiro Morinaga is often regarded as the father of the Japanese chocolate industry. After spending 11 years in the United States learning the craft of confectionery making, he returned to Japan in 1899. At the time, Western-style sweets were still a novelty and not widely available to the Japanese public. Morinaga's ambition was to popularize these treats. He started his business in a tiny factory, merely 2 tsubo in size, and initially sold his products himself from a cart that he pulled through the streets. One of his first major successes was a chocolate-coated marshmallow. This product was a strategic choice for several reasons. Firstly, its quality was less prone to degradation in Japan's hot and humid climate, which was a significant challenge for confectionery at the time. Secondly, the product was given the brand name Angel Mark, reflecting Morinaga's own Christian faith. Through his determination and thoughtful product strategy, Morinaga laid the groundwork for chocolate to become a beloved part of Japanese household culture. Chocolate cigarettes. For much of the 20th century, a peculiar type of candy known as chocolate cigarettes was a common sight in shops across Europe. Companies like Cadbury produced these sweets, which were designed to closely resemble real cigarettes. The packaging often mimicked popular cigarette brands, and the chocolates themselves were thin sticks wrapped in paper, sometimes with a red tip to simulate a lit end. They were particularly popular among children, who would often pretend to smoke them, copying the behavior of adults. This mimicry was seen as a harmless part of childhood play for many decades. However, as public awareness of the health risks associated with smoking grew, attitudes towards these products began to shift. By the 1990s, health organizations and parent groups started to raise concerns that candy cigarettes normalized smoking and could act as a gateway for children to take up the habit later in life. This led to widespread public debate and calls for a ban. In response, many countries introduced legislation or voluntary agreements to prohibit the sale of confectionery that resembles tobacco products. As a result of these changing social values and regulations, chocolate cigarettes have now largely disappeared from the market. Lindt chocolate coincidence. Before the late 19th century, chocolate was not the smooth, melt-in-your-mouth treat we know today. Early chocolate was often gritty and bitter, with a coarse texture that was difficult to enjoy. Chocolatiers struggled with how to refine the mixture of ground cocoa beans, sugar, and cocoa butter to create a more appealing product. The process was challenging, and the resulting chocolate often had an unpleasant, sandy feel and a sharp, acidic taste that needed to be masked with other flavorings. This all changed in 1879 due to a fortunate mistake by Swiss chocolatier Rudolf Lindt. One Friday evening, he left his factory for the weekend, accidentally leaving a mixing machine running. The machine continued to churn the chocolate mixture for over 72 hours. When he returned, he discovered that the prolonged stirring and aeration had transformed the gritty paste into a smooth, liquid consistency with a rich aroma. Unwanted acidity and bitterness had evaporated, leaving a delicate flavor. This process, which became known as conching, was revolutionary, and it laid the foundation for the velvety texture of modern chocolate.